Jim. Hello, everyone, and welcome to TFYLP, episode number 252, recorded July 1st, 2017. I am your host, Duron Land, a.k.a. Weird Wolf. Along with me this evening is Jim Black, holding up Top Spin like he's something proud. Your mic is muted.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think he's still muted.
He always forgets to do that.
I'm so excited I'm speaking in mime.
Yes. Yeah, that's probably the best way it is.
That's why we all hate you, is it? No one loves a mime.
Headmaster Don.
Hey, everybody.
Waste.
Jack Brunner.
Hey, everybody.
And Proto-Man.
Fun fact, I just realized it's Canada Day, and I'm recording this show with a Captain America shirt on. I just realized.
You are unpatriotic.
I'm a terrible Canadian.
You are
When
unpatriotic.
Captain America throws his mighty No, sorry. I'm sorry.
How you doing, guys?
Did you have some maple syrup and watch a hockey game today?
I have a Bret Hart figure near me, if that means anything. So.
Close enough.
Close
That'll
enough.
work.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
surprised. I'm surprised you're not watching the USA G1 climax.
I'm going to catch you later.
Ah.
I'm going to catch you later.
Yeah, I'm probably going to watch it tomorrow on NJPW.
Well, it's spoilers and catch you later.
Yeah. But also, incidentally related, I want to announce that we have a sister podcast produced by the people here at TFYLP, namely myself and Rick Alvarez and a couple newcomers. I want to point out that we have if you're a fan of professional wrestling, pro wrestling, we have a new podcast out, Fans of Wrestling Everywhere podcast. Check it out on iTunes. There's also a YouTube channel for it, so just search it out. We've got our pilot episode out of the way, just kind of basically introducing ourselves and talking about some of our favorites. Then we're going to be going to do a topical discussion each week, plus a look at some current events. It's not going to be each week. We're doing a bi-weekly show, so twice a month. Look for the Fans of Wrestling Everywhere podcast. I'm going to try to get it out as many places as possible. It's also a Facebook group, so check it out. If you're a fan of pro wrestling, check that out. Also, I want to tell everybody about our sponsors, CapturePrey.com. Great toys, great prices, great service, CapturePrey.com, where you can save even more with orders of $150 or more with free domestic shipping. And if you're international, like up in Canada, you can get you can get discounted shipping to international locations. Also, Mega Toy Fan. Check out Mega Toy Fan at popular robot and toy conventions year-round. Just recently, we were at Pete's Robot Convention in Cincinnati, or Covington, Kentucky, which is just across the river. It's a good little show. Had some fun there. And then he's also going to be at TFCon in Canada coming up in a couple weeks, as well as TFCon USA in D.C. later this year. Check him out. And if you love awesome t-shirts like the one I'm wearing right here, the Rat Bat Batman, check it out at rippedapparel.com. And if you see any t-shirts on there, regardless whether or not they're Transformer related or not, be sure to use the promo code TFYLPPOD, and you can save 10% on your order. So check out Ripped Apparel. And as always, if you are a huge fan of this podcast, we can't keep going without your help. So if you want to help support us, down there at the bottom of the screen, if you're watching us on YouTube, is a reminder to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TFYLP. Whatever you feel like giving, whether it's $1 or up to $100, you can help us out by helping through Patreon. We use those funds to pay for our server fees, help upgrade equipment when needed, when possible, things of that nature. So we want to thank everybody who continues to do the Patreon. We thank you from our heartfelt bottom of our hearts. Several of you who actually are members of Patreon that support us on there. We're at Pete's Robot Convention, and it was an absolute wonderful delight to see you in person. And thank you. I know Carrie, a big shout out to Carrie. She was there, and without you guys, we couldn't be here. So thank you. So tonight, I want to give a little forewarning. If you have not seen Transformers 5, The Last Night,
Get the hell out.
we are going to be talking about this show in depth. And if you haven't seen it, then we're going to spoil it for you. So, bottom line, we're going to talk about our thoughts, some of our favorite scenes, maybe least favorite scenes, and then anything else that might pop up. So hopefully you enjoy our thoughts on this. Maybe you might concur, maybe you might not. We'd love to hear from you. You can tweet us at TFYLP on Twitter, or you can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/TFYLP. And let us know on there. This episode is pinned to the top of the Facebook group. So if you are looking for it within a week after the broadcast, it's always pinned to the top of the forum. So guys, which one of you saw it first? I waited over a week to go see it. Did any of you guys see it on opening night?
Yeah, I did on the 21st.
Yeah,
With my dad. So
it was too late for me to see it on the Tuesday, but I did see it first thing Wednesday.
So, was it a packed house on opening night?
I think it got about halfway. It was pretty decent. It was, we can actually. It wasn't getting humid, which was the greatest thing, because I think the last movie, Age of Extinction, it was so packed. Both times I went to see it within a span of a couple days, it was packed, both showings, and it was so humid. And so this time, luckily, it wasn't as packed. So
Wasn't as packed? Okay.
shut up, Duran.
Just making fun of your accent.
Lord. But yeah, it was pretty decent. It was honestly more than I was expecting. I was honestly expecting just me and my dad and maybe two other people sitting, but it actually filled up pretty well.
Even a week later, the theater that my girlfriend and her daughter, we went and saw it, and it was a relatively full theater. Maybe the first couple rows were empty and a few empty seats here and there, but it was generally full. What about you, Jim? What was it like whenever you experienced it?
Well, I went to a smaller theater on the west side of Indianapolis here in Plainfield, and we had waited a little over a week to go see it after the premiere. It wasn't really packed necessarily, like I said, being a smaller theater, I didn't expect it to be. Plus, it'd been a few days, but no, it was all right. It had a decent turnout. I, for one, enjoyed it. I like any of the other movies, I had my disagreements with a few things here and there, but overall, I thought it was a fun movie.
What about turnout in Canada, Daniel?
I didn't
my screening was a little more unique because I decided to go do an early screening, and the primary reason why I went for that was because I wanted to be in a more smaller audience. And the preview screenings are usually just reserved for like radio station reviewers, magazine reviewers, and stuff like that. The theater I went to is the largest theater in Montreal. It's like the downtown theater. But I was lucky to get tickets to that preview screening. Thank you to CJLO radio station who hooks me up every year with them. And honestly, huge theater, 14 people maybe. And those 14... But no. But keep in mind, this isn't public. This is more.
Canadian theaters are really small.
Yeah. No, it's the biggest you could probably get really on the island, but it was really more just for the reviewers that were reviewers in the city, and sometimes they bring friends with or whatever. But if I really had to count on my hand and feet, probably no more than that. Maybe 15, 16. It was very little. But I mean, again, unique kind of situation. And I kind of wanted it to be that because I've always been reminded of when I went to go see Avengers for the first time. I saw it with like a packed house, and everyone was laughing at everything, and I couldn't hear any of the dialogue. So it was the same thing. I was like, you know what? I'm going to be able to enjoy this movie in a more intimate environment, so it could just be kind of me in the theater.
Yeah, it was kind of a stark contrast to whenever I went to see Age of Extinction. I went to see it at the local theater here in the town that I live in, which is I'm located about 20 miles outside of the city limits of Louisville, Kentucky, and the theater that's here in town is quite small. Matter of fact, the last night only has like 3 showings on the weekend days, so it's like 3 times on Saturday, 3 times on Sunday, and then it's really sad. But I went to see the Age of Extinction there a couple years ago. I was there opening night at midnight because I was off from work, had nothing better to do. I was the only butthead in the whole damn theater. I could sit and watch the movie, yell at it. I was screaming at it. You're stupid. That's not it.
Put your feet up. Nobody complains.
Yeah, I had my feet up. It was I had the run of the theater. When I came out, a couple of the people that worked there, they commented, it's like, well, did you enjoy it? And I'm like, no, and I left. But the last night, I went and saw it at a much larger theater in Louisville, and it was an experience. My girlfriend, she enjoyed it. Her daughter enjoyed it quite well, and for the action scenes and some of the comedy, I enjoyed it. But as a Transformers film, excuse me, I did not. And I'll go into why here later. But I kind of wanted to get you guys what your thoughts on it. And I know a lot of other podcasts have had an opportunity to talk about this film. A lot of people talked about it. I think you guys talked about it on RFC, like the week it came out. But I kind of like the fact that we haven't been available to do a live show in the last couple weeks. So we've had an opportunity for people to go see it, kind of digest what they think about it, and how they feel about it. And I want to give those thoughts on this particular show here. So I think it kind of works out in our favor to be kind of one of the last to talk about it for those reasons. But I also want to know, or I also want to give everybody a programming note for the duration of the summer. It's a little difficult for us to get all the cast together and do live episodes, so there may be several pre-recorded episodes during the summer. So please bear with us. It's just really difficult.
Life.
Yeah, it's live.
Yep.
Lots of people traveling. I mean, it's convention season. We got several people going to conventions. I know Don is going to TFCon USA. Daniel's going to both TFCons. Megamus has got several shows he's going to. Vacation. So
and none of us are going to HasCon.
Well, HasCon weekend. Well, Daniel's going.
I'm probably going to still do that one too.
Oh, okay.
But
most of us are
going for the Triforce this year
because he wants to be part of the family.
Oh God, no! Don't remind me of that.
$100 Hall of Fame dinner.
$200.
Are they still doing the Hall of Fame?
Yep.
Yeah, it's the HasCon Hall of Fame now.
So not a Transformer Hall of Fame.
Yeah, not necessarily.
Honestly, you can expect a couple of ponies.
Well, it will be kind of interesting to see if they announce of the main 6 My Little Ponies, the infighting over who gets picked. That would be kind of fun to watch. Them choose between the 6. Just sell popcorn and sit back and watch it.
What was that one that was named after the Reflector remold? Some kind of Sentinel?
Flash Century.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I'm still trying to live that one down. Still never got that toy, Pete. If you're watching.
Wanted it.
I wrote the bio. I should get a toy. Anyway.
Anyway, the last night, Dawn, I want to start with you, since you're probably the most elder statesman on the podcast, as it were. What are your
Thank you for
thoughts?
phrasing that better than Brett would.
Well, I was going to say
kinda
I was
true.
going to say the old fart
As
of
he
the
adjusts
podcast.
his collar.
Yeah, I was going to say the old fart of the podcast, but yeah, elder
Anyway.
statesman.
All right. Well, I'm gonna retread a little bit of that we talked about on RSC, because even after another week or so thinking about it, a lot of it still holds true. It's not a cop out. It's the basic fact. Everything good that I can say about the last night has a little asterisk hanging in the air, and that asterisk denotes to a footnote that says for a Michael Bay Transformers movie, because in the context of this movie versus the other movies, these are good points. Compared to movies outside the genre, no, it's not. I thought the characterization was a lot better on the humans. They weren't there as just to give exposition dumps and then vanish or die or just not have a presence in the movie. It was a mostly logical progression from plot point A to B to C without the random jumping. Again, I know Revenge of the Fallen had its own issues behind the scenes, and the editors can only work with what they're given, but it wasn't this random haphazard lurching like trying to teach a 14-year-old how to drive a stick shift from plot point to plot point. So it was not that. I think Cabe, the Mark Wahlberg character, as a freedom fighter kind of thing, fit him a lot better than a inventor. I could buy that aspect of him a lot more. First 20, 30 minutes of the movie, Isabelle Monet, the young lady that played Isabella, I thought stole the performance.
She's adorable.
She
Yeah,
is an
actually did better
extremely
than what I was expecting.
She is an extremely good young actress. She delivered her lines with a lot of emotion. She was a perfect audience character to see this new world that people were living in these Transformer these Transformer battle sites. She had no parents. She only had one a protector. Canopy, I think was the name. Was his
basically
name.
a junk pile.
Yeah, basically.
The robot
but
with the
she
hole.
but she delivered her lines believably with emotion, and you kind of felt for her having to live like this, and you could believe she was this tough young lady who's like, I'm not going to take your crap. I'm going to beat the crap out of you, and if you don't like it, tough. Squeaks did not get on my nerves, so that basically to me he's movie fix it, so that's fine. He's just not orange.
And
Anthony
have drill
Hopkins,
hands.
yeah, and Anthony Hopkins I think was fine. He played a very interesting role as far as the expositional mouthpiece of the movie, but it wasn't just him showing up. He had maintained a presence throughout the movie. Cogman was wonderful. I really enjoyed Cogman. He was funny. He was serious. He was schizophrenic / psychotic. You can just ask him which definition he preferred.
And he's a headmaster.
Yeah, I am kind of. He has alluded to being a headmaster, yet he never head-ons. And I was hoping that he would, because then
I was
his robot.
massively disappointed in that. Yeah,
Because I was really hoping his robot mode would have been look like Tux. That would have been so cool to be look like Tux. But
But they at least said it on screen, though. That's the important.
Yeah,
thing.
they said it on screen, so there's that. The only human I really have an issue with, well, two humans, and it's not really an issue. It's just why. The actor that played Cade's assistant in the junkyard, I think I think whatever his name was. I'm sorry, I didn't.
yeah, fluff character.
Yeah.
He served no purpose. I would have much rather his screen time gone to Isabella's character
Yep.
Or Cogman or somewhere. I don't think he served any purpose. And towards the end, the guy at NASA who seems to take control of figuring this stuff out, he was introduced in one throwaway scene when Cybertron first appears, and then all of a sudden he's responsible for saving the world. It's like you could have either introduced him better, made him more important than just a throwaway scene, and then all of a sudden, I'm going to save the world. No, you're not, because you screwed up. So there's that. All in all, I think Last Night is a very solid movie with a lot better characters for the humans. The Transformers, again, take the back seat in their own movie. Optimus Prime is Bender with a good and evil switch. I had absolutely no empathy. I had no build-up. There was no... He was like, hi, I'm your creator. You're evil now. Okay. He basically goes evil and becomes Nemesis Prime. And then he talks to Bumblebee, and 5 seconds later, I'm good again. We good? Yep. We good.
Yeah.
It's just it was no emotional stakes at all. I mean, nothing. And Prime was basically the Godzilla of Godzilla's movie. He was not in it that much, but maybe less Prime was a good thing. But that problem is Crosshairs, Drift, and Hound, especially Hound, did not have that much screen time. And they were still not much more than their characters. Bumblebee still got a lion's share of the non-Prime screen time, which of course we all know that because Bumblebee and all that. So again, it was for a Michael Bay Transformers movie. I think it was very good. I wish it hadn't taken them 5 movies to get basic screenwriting down to the point where the writer in me wasn't like, God, why did you phrase it like that? And one final thing that I really liked, there wasn't an embarrassing, cringe-worthy scene like last time's get out of jail free card. And I'm not going to elaborate because we all know what that was. So it was nice to not see that again.
Well, for the people that might not understand what you're saying, Don, elaborate.
The cringeworthy stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. I know a good one from the first movie.
I'm sure some of us do, but
okay. No twins. Yeah. There's no twins.
Yeah.
No Mudflap. No skids.
Wrecking balls.
No jive talking robots.
No popping out a cork and peeing lubricant on somebody.
Peeing lubricant, exactly. Jazz acting. This was kind of minor on the first movie, but Jazz acting all street cool and break dance is just that's not. Jazz might do it, but this doesn't fit him.
Or when Sam's parents walk into his room, it's like, "Where are you?" Oh,
Yeah.
That was the most cringeworthy.
And of course the thing with the brown.
No.
Yeah, his parents and the brownies. There was that.
I still say wrecking balls, but hands down wrecking balls.
Yeah, but
none of those Constructicons had a wrecking ball in the vehicle whatsoever. Why did the Combiner have them?
But I will say it did give us a railgun scene, which was like the U.S. Navy has a railgun. This is interesting. Tell me more. I'm sure we have a Stargate buried somewhere too, and they're not saying anything.
But they conveniently forgot about it in Dark of the Moon.
Yeah, because they could have used that to shut down the pillars.
Yeah. Now, Jack, what about your thoughts?
Pretty much Don nailed it on the nose. Because I'm honestly a huge fan of Simmons. I was kind of surprised that he only got that amount of screen time.
I forgot Simmons, but I liked it. That to me, that was just enough him to be enjoyable without being OD'd.
Yeah, I was still kind of surprised to see Topspin and Roadbuster in it because I honestly thought they died after Dark of the Moon.
Why does Topspin have Leadfoot's head?
That's what I was thinking. I kind of got to reading on it on the TF Wiki. I think it was like yesterday or the day before, and I was like, "Oh, he just grew a beard." I was like, "Huh?"
Well, that's Leadfoot's head.
But, yeah, I was like, maybe he just went to got Leadfoot's body or something, and
maybe what was left of him escaped to Cuba, and they patched together what was left of the 3 wreckers.
Because I was like, because I saw Topspin, and I'm like, is that who I think it is? And all of a sudden I got to reading. I'm like, I didn't even see Roadbuster in there. When was he there?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, because like I said, I thought they died when Cemetery 1 was, dispatched and going after every Autobot, and I didn't realize they lived. So that was kind of nice to see him again.
Quintessa? Because I didn't mention Quintessa because there's not a lot to mention. Other than... Much. I will say one thing real quick, Jack. Well, I'm going to say whether you agree or not. As Transformer fans, we know who she represents and who the Primes represent. Yeah. But in the context of the movie, you gain nothing about who she was from the context of the movie. Do you agree?
Yeah, it was pretty much, she's like, I'm the creator.
Well, she referred to herself as the Prime of Life, so that she's considering herself a Prime.
Yeah.
That raises some questions right there.
Right. Yeah, I just didn't really care too much about her character at all. It was just because it was like Don said, it's like the whole Optimus talks to Quintessa, he turns evil, then all of a sudden Bumblebee says one line and he's like, oh, what did I do? It's like that was the only thing that was really irritating me throughout the whole thing. Is like, wow, it just took him a whole line of dialogue just to get snapped out and be like, okay, I want to kick some Decepticon ass.
And then Bumblebee, like, huh? And Bumblebee did not sound like Will Friedle. That was a disappointment.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping they would have brought back Dan Gilvezan.
No,
I know that's what
they won't. They're not going to do it. Daniel, your thoughts on your viewing?
Man, it's a lot of movie. I said it before on other podcasts. It was a lot of movie. Felt like 4 hours, really was almost 3. A lot of things kind of bothered me about it. I mean, I'll mention the good first. Really dug Cogman. I thought he was the breakout character of the movie. Really didn't expect to go into that movie thinking that. I was kind of expecting notre robot qui parle français pour faire le plus meilleur. Mais c'est pas possible avec cet film comme ça, and I'm already losing half of the audience there. But
but you gained some French ones.
Thanks to my high school French, I caught like 4 words. So
high school French.
Non, c'est bon. Mais c'est bizarre quand une personne comme Hot-Rod. C'est bizarre. What I'm trying to get at is just I found it very bizarre how you had a character like Vivian who was clearly this upper crust European character from the UK or Britain or somewhere specifically. They never really specify exactly where she's from. But how like a France accent to her is like completely over her head. Like it's like, I don't know, there's weird things like that was kind of cringy for me. Hot Rod being French was also kind of like, whatever. If I had it my way, he wouldn't have been French, but whatever. I think I have a theory for what they're going to do with the Bumblebee movie down the line. And I think that probably leads into why Hot Rod speaks French and a whole bunch of other things that they're just not establishing now. And God forbid there's actually canon and continuity in these big movies, which I don't believe there is. I find that this movie, what Don and Jack didn't mention, which was this big key plot point, Unicron. And Unicron being Earth, which has been a concept that's been used before in Transformers fiction, used with Transformers Prime. And I have no problem with that idea, but I have a problem with that idea in the context of what we've been told of Earth and everything within the movie continuity. Everything that we've been told up to this point, especially, and like Don said, if you go into this as a educated Transformer fan who knows Quintessons and the Fallen and stuff like this, you leave it almost more confused, because then you go, well, the Fallen is supposed to be this entity that is, spread across all the continuities, and is he betraying his master Unicron because technically he went to Earth to use the Star Harvester to harvest the star, but that would kill Earth in the process, which would be his master. And it's just right away.
I think I've gone cross-eyed.
Well, that's just it. There you go. And so the the lot of stuff that has been established up to this point really has to be now swept under the rug with this new stuff. Now, that's kind of the problem when you have, I like to say, 4 different writers across these 5 movies, because I find that Orson Kurtzman's Revenge of the Fallen take was really a half-written job. So it's just, you have this weird story that I go, okay, well, I have to take it as a movie on its own. Let's ignore continuity. Let's forget what I saw before and just enjoy it for what it is. Cogman was fine. He was kind of funny. I like the scene where he kicks the fish and stuff. I mean, there's little moments that made me have like a belly chuckle. You know, like, okay, that's
Dude,
got
when
that's
started singing. Oh my god!
That was kind of like that's over the top funny. That's like, okay, you're trying to get a chuckle from the kids in the audience or something more so. It's like, oh, that's a funny scene. But there was Cogman I enjoyed more or less. He was an interesting character. I found aesthetically, I almost felt they had to keep him away from Squeaks, because if those two were together, it's just C-3PO and R2-D2. Like, if they were just standing next to each other, just totally call that out. He was a fun character. I attribute to why he was a fun character, because he was a human-sized robot. He just was in all the scenes. When all the humans were flapping all the dialogue in the movie, because he happens to be a Transformer that's human-sized, he fit into all the scenes and was able to interact with them. It's the same reason how we were able to enjoy, say, Wheelie in Revenge of the Fallen, despite the fact that, it was a crappy movie, but his scenes that he had were enjoyable for what they were because of him being a smaller demeanor character. And there's too much to talk about with this movie. That's the problem. It's just to go into Quintessa. Like, here's a character that, if you're a hardcore Transformer fan, you have a general idea of what you expect of this character. But if you were someone who went into this raw, nothing is told to you. You're like, what do we know of Quintessa? Lost. We're told this and that, and then she gets shot by Bumblebee and disappears, and then reappears somewhere else as a human. And I mean, there was a lot of exposition in this movie from Anthony Hopkins' character Hammond, but there was very little exposition of who Quintessa was. Are they keeping this for a future movie or something? Perhaps, but we know that the next movie's a Bumblebee movie, so we're not going to get that answer anytime soon, unless that's like an end credit thing from the Bumblebee movie. But I found that she was this key central point of the movie that really wasn't established very well, and is supposed to be the main antagonist, but we don't really know motive. We don't really know who she is. We have more questions than answers, where in the end we kind of just go, we just go like, well, then what was Cybertron? Was she always chilling there? How, Optimus flew into space at the end of the last movie. He gets frozen. He just happens to luckily crash into Cybertron. She's just kind of chilling at the gates of it practically. Where was she all this time? If she was so easily accessible all this time, does that mean all the IDW comics of the movie continuity mean anything anymore? Probably not at this point, because those comics had their own Unicron in it, and that stuff is now swept under the rug with the Titan books from the UK. Confusing coming out of my mouth for a lot of viewers. I understand that, but it's just, there was so much stuff that was established up to this point with this movie universe that this movie kind of just knocks over the bowling pins and goes like, you know what, we're just going to start from scratch again, and maybe this B movie and Michael Bay being gone, and the next one will start anew. I mean, every 5 to 7 years we got a Spider-Man reboot, and never hurt that intellectual property. I think it's time for Transformers to kind of get the same thing, so I don't know. I don't hate this movie. Like, I hated, let's say, I wasn't a fan of Age of Extinction. I wasn't a fan of Revenge of the Fallen. But it kind of fits in that same indifference that I had for Dark of the Moon, where it had its good, but it also had its bad. But at the same time, I didn't leave the theater going like, that's a must-see movie. It's more me just, you raise a kid, and that kid is a bad kid his whole life, and then finally you go to a restaurant and he's sitting quietly for once, and you kind of just clap, and I think that's what it is. You've had a bad movies for so long that finally you get something that's kind of okay, and you just kind of go, okay, I guess, yeah, sure, hey, congratulations, Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I'll maybe jump in afterwards. There's too much to unpack about this movie, really. There's way too much.
Well, we'll move on to Jim. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, right off the bat, one little thing I noticed that kind of made me smile a little bit. Probably nothing important. I'm probably reading way too much into it, I'm sure, like I usually do. But Quintessa technically has more than one face. By her showing up in the after scene as a human, that's technically a second face. So we've seen 2 of the 5 faces of evil. Just saying. I don't know which one.
Hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, I know.
I can look at it like Alice, where Alice has some kind of Cybertron, and then she has her pretender mode.
Right.
You know, so.
Well, the whole movie, I was just waiting for like the head to just kind of like flip around real quick and use a different voice or something. And I guess she must be more like one of the scientist type Quintessons if they're in any way sticking to that. That convention from Generation 1. I don't know how closely, aside from tentacles, that they're sticking to that.
Yeah, this is kind of old school for a lot of people.
Yes.
But she didn't remind me more of a Quintesson than she did Hexadecimal from Reboot. That's what she reminded me more of was Hexadecimal with that.
I could totally see that. Now.
I see where they were kind of, and again, I'm giving these writers way too much credit if this is the case, but when the Transformers Energon series in Japan, Superlink, was being written in its first early drafts, the concept of Alpha Q, Alpha Quintesson, was supposed to be the true form of this Quintessonian princess. And there's like early drafts of it and stuff. And if you watch the Japanese dub, he actually has like a cutesy female voice. That's his real.
I think I remember you talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I want to believe that they were pulling a little bit from that, but I mean, I'm giving them too much credit if they actually delve that deep into the lore of Transformers. That kind of character that Quintessa is, this like, I mean, it's actually existed a lot in Japanese anime. I'm gonna list off a lot of stuff that probably the average viewer here is probably never. But Mystic Knights, Ray Earth, and a lot of stuff where you have these kind of like this heel turn, innocent princess character that's all powerful that ends up being the main antagonist. And this has existed in a lot of different major anime and manga kind of Japanese stuff. The writers, I don't know where their lore, enjoyment comes from. Sometimes you never know. You end up dealing with a writer that ends up being a really big fan of Sailor Moon and pulling something from it. So, but it's just I saw a lot of similarities with that, where there was a lot of that kind of stuff. And that's the character of Quintessa. Despite the fact that she was completely not fleshed out at all, I saw a lot of similarities to that. Anyone go back and watch Mystic Knights, Ray Earth, or I'm trying to remember a few others. There's a lot of similarities to that kind of character. And I lost everyone on that because
that's all right.
But when you said Mystic Knights, Ray Earth,
I'm just glad you didn't go into Kiss Players.
Yeah. No, you said Mystic Knights, Ray Earth, and I'm thinking Mystic Knights of Tyrannog. That's just where I went for a second.
Nice. But one thing I was disappointed about is we didn't get too much with the Dinobots. But I have to say, I am absolutely in love with the baby Dinobots. I totally want figures of them.
Where did they come
stop
from?
Laughing. They were perfect.
Fire.
Once again, it was like, did Cade make these? Did the Dinobots?
Where did they come from?
Yeah.
Where did they come from?
Well, when you live in a junkyard, you got to do something to pass the time. You get a little lonesome. Got to make some baby Dinobots.
There was the mini versions, but whatever happened to I believe his name was Strafe, which was the swoop one, if you want to call it that. What happened to him? He wasn't he guess didn't survive till the next movie.
But there was a Pteranodon one.
That's what I'm saying. They were all alive at the end of the fourth one.
There was mini versions of the large ones. But one of the large ones, in the case of Strafe, was absent. So again, there's so many questions that this movie had,
if there's baby Dinobots, it raises the questions: who's the mama?
I thought
not the mama.
Yeah, that means one of those Dinobots, probably Scorn. I'm gonna say Scorn is the bitch of the bunch.
No, well, actually here's the thing.
Yeah,
it was actually an homage to the '86 movie where Snarl was missing for all the movie, and so they just homaged it with
Well,
It could have been, yeah.
since
That
there
actually
was
makes sense.
since there was all the kind of different Dinobots represented, that means all the main Dinobots are female.
Life finds a way.
Yeah.
There you go.
The one thing I could give
Hound,
the
what
movie
have you
credit,
been
at
doing?
least from a character standpoint, there was a lot of movie toys that were revealed to us. I always call it the toy spoiler, where we're shown a whole bunch of movie toys before we see a movie. And I've been so used to, up to this point, seeing all these movie toys, and then when you go to see the movie, like only 6 characters are used. There was a lot of movie toys that we were shown that ended up making appearances in this movie. The Skeletron being one of the Fallen Knights. What's his name there?
Who wasn't a
the
villain?
dragon.
Steelbane.
I thought that was going to be a villain.
Steelbane.
But it turned out just to happen to be just one of the knights. He just happened to have no face.
There was a lot of those that just made some kind of smaller appearances, and I appreciate that, at least, that they made the effort to make more of that product at least kind of appear in the screen. Yeah, Berserker.
Yeah,
actually,
I was pissed.
That's what I wanted.
Nitro Zeus.
That's what I wanted to bring up. That was the one thing that actually confused me a lot. There was a scene in the movie, and it's the scene where Megatron is making a deal with the
Lennox and the
lawyer.
Yep.
Well, and they're introducing Decepticon characters, and they're going like, I want a free Mohawk, and they do this super, Suicide Squad. Bam! It's Mohawk, and they have his name at the bottom, and they give a little bit of character development with 2 lines. Yeah, I'm Mohawk, and it's like, I'm Nitro Zeus, and I'm now Jazz, but I'm evil, and it's like, and then Nitro Zeus at the bottom, and then it's like, I'm Berserker, and because I can't even be released, I'm going to be introduced to you and then not used in the movie, and then I'm like. Yeah, but see, I found that bizarre that they went out of their way to introduce the Decepticons in such a manner. Now you say to yourself, well, they're introducing them like that because they're going to be very important in the movie. And then literally 15 minutes after their introduction, 3 of the 5 are killed off.
Mohawk was decapitated, yet he was still living. I still had questions about that. I was like, huh?
Well, so... they introduce the characters like that, and I go, okay, if they're trying to introduce characters from a selling standpoint, why didn't they kind of try to do the same with the Autobots, at least? I'm reminded of the second Avengers movie where they went out of their way that when each character was on the screen, they do a slow-mo shot and really show who, just to like emphasize product.
Oh, yeah.
Product, yep. IP. But they only did this with the Decepticons, and these were Decepticons that, on top of them getting killed off easily, there's no sign of a Mohawk toy down the line, to my knowledge, or Onslaught for that matter.
Onslaught, there was a tease, but it ended up being fake. Yeah, because I looked that up the other day because I really want an Onslaught.
But that's what I'm trying to say. So it's like, why were they trying to do parody of Suicide Squad? Where I almost felt it was typical Michael Bay directing, where he had an idea to do something and then it got accidentally left in, maybe. Or I don't know. I
think Suicide Squad may have had a part in that in some capacity, because that idea had to have come from somewhere. Exactly. But one thing that surprised me, Nitro Zeus wasn't just a random made up cool sounding Transformer name. It's actually a thing.
The name of his dog.
Well, there was another one. Supposedly it was.
It's a cyber attack thing that the United States had just in case the Iran thing went sour.
But it's also the name of Michael Bay's dog.
Is it?
You're serious?
I'm serious.
Well then.
Maybe Michael heard of the Nitro Zeus, the operation thing. Possibly. Named it after his dog, and then the Decepticon got named after the dog.
That might explain why the voice just called Nitro then, I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
But, well, Jim, did you have any other thoughts on the movie?
Yeah. Like I said, I don't care if it's third party or Hasbro, Takara Tomy, whatever. I want baby Dinobots. Somebody get on that, like now.
I guess the main thing you have to settle with is the little tiny turbo changers.
Tiny turbo chargers.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yep.
I
think that'll work.
Another thing, like everybody else has said, I absolutely loved the character of Cogman. I thought he was just an amazing, refreshing addition to the franchise. He wasn't like overly stoic like Optimus tends to be anymore. He wasn't necessarily, ridiculous. I mean, yeah, there was a part where he did the opera singing and that just screwing around. But I think that was more just being lighthearted and just having a little bit of fun. But it didn't go too far. It didn't actually destroy the scene. Him going out of the missile silo and the submarine and catching a freaking fish. That I can understand why he did it. I wonder if it was necessary for the plot, but even so, I thought it was kind of funny.
Where'd he get the garnish for his sushi? Does he keep it on him?
There's more to him than meets the eye.
Evidently.
Well, it kind of had the little tux, thing, so it might have just been stuck in there.
Yeah, I think he keeps it on him, I guess, because that was the first thing that went in my mind. I'm like, wow, that's some good sushi, but where'd he get all of that?
He's essentially a robot butler, so I'm sure he's probably got all of his supplies stored.
As a mini
fridge. Get the candle?
Some kind of compartment.
Yeah, he has a built-in fridge.
The thing with Unicron being Earth, and I'm still, all these years later after Transformers Prime, I'm still not completely wrapped my head around that idea. I mean, I can understand why they think it would work better than just having a random planet come down and try to eat Earth, which that's totally not Cybertron right now. But it makes me wonder, if they've confirmed the existence of Unicron, are they going to, once Cybertron is, I guess, eventually restored, because it's still floating next to Earth right now. That's what left off. Are they going to essentially say that that's going to be Primus? Is that going to be a thing?
Well, here's the thing that's also interesting is that this movie kind of made me question, like, who is truly the villain? Because if you looked at it from face value, wouldn't technically Quintessa and Cybertron be the good guys and Unicron and Earth be the bad guys? It seems like even Megatron is trying to help Quintessa fulfill her goal of killing Unicron, which is Earth.
Well,
so
there's the one wild card in that. I mean, had Earth not been populated by humans, by innocent, mammals, whales, bugs, whatever, just life in general, if it was just a desolate planet, then yeah, Quintessa would be, I would think, in the right to come up and destroy Unicron, through any means necessary. However, I suppose it's apparently implied that we humans and life in general are the spawn of Unicron.
A product of it, yeah.
And Optimus and the Autobots are wanting to protect and preserve life on Earth. So that's going to require essentially Unicron to remain dormant, just like he did in Transformers Prime. Maybe he'll make some kind of smaller manifestation of himself to fight some kind of combiner or something.
Infernicus.
Yeah, they didn't. I don't think that they did the Infernicus thing too well. I mean, I appreciate that they included another combiner since Mr. Wrecking Balls back in Fallen.
Yeah,
I'm surprised that they went about, while not used visually in the movie, they went about using one of the Prime mold repaint retools in the movie, which up to this point, we've had tons of non-movie toys used in their toy lines, but none of them ever really showing up in the movies themselves, except for maybe the comic book fiction. But this is the first time that we've had like, oh, hey, Infernicus is going to be the Abominus mold retooled and repainted, and we're going to use this in the movie on top of that, which is like, okay.
They didn't really take the time to introduce him as a character, explain that he was a combiner, or any of that. He just kind of, like when Prime is first captured by Quintessa, he walks up from behind in his combined mode already. He's already assembled. And then you see him later on in the final battle.
And from an intellectual property standpoint, I didn't understand why even bother licensing a brand new name. You might as well just would have called him Abominus. They already. Because
I would think that they still had that trademark. As recently,
they do have a trademark still. So that's something that I also found bizarre. Why would you build a new IP? Might as well use something that's already established. You're probably never going to revisit the Abominus name anyways in all these Bay fiction anyhow or beyond.
The only other thing I could think of is maybe they're securing it ahead of time for some combiner later on down the line.
Maybe combiner force that's happening with the RID 2.0
Right.
2.0 line. Maybe they want to save that name for something
There's that. We don't know all of what's going to happen in Power of the Primes yet. We could see more
That is true.
combiners yet.
So that's a possibility.
It's hard to say. But the way that they portrayed Infernicus, though, I think they could have done more with it, honestly. Instead of, bringing in Mohawk, for instance, a throwaway character. You have Quintessa have her personal guards give them some kind of interaction. Maybe have one of them walk up and say something.
Nah, they're not.
Slap him in the face or something.
That was the big issue with this movie, that after 2.5 hours or 2 hours and 45 minutes, ultimately in the end, the two chosen ones once again were two human characters. It was Vivian with the Cybertronian staff that only she could wield, a human. And guess who the last knight is, guys?
Mr. Human.
And it's once again me just going like, man, these movies aren't about Transformers anymore, and I always get my heart broken every time going into these movies, going like, I was really hoping this time that this would be a Transformer movie, but this one more than ever like reaffirmed me that it's just like, look, they're not going to be the focus or the heroes. Optimus Prime was a villain. Bumblebee was getting his butt thrown around the whole time. Decepticons are getting easily killed off. Human characters are destroying Transformers like they're nothing. Autobots are squabbling amongst themselves. A French-hating, Autobot who is French. It's, and then you had Cogman, who kind of was the only savior in this movie. And then you had some new characters that were also introduced, didn't have lines, kind of killed off. So, with the exception of Cogman, there wasn't really an important Transformer role in this movie. Everything was just about humans. And it's a shame. It's a shame.
Here's my thoughts on the movie. And before I go into my more in-depth thoughts, several of you, even some of the listeners, may be friends with me on Facebook and have read my post about it a few days after I viewed the movie. I posted on my personal page some thoughts, and I'm going to read a few paragraphs from what I posted about it, for the benefit of those who don't follow me and everything. Now, what I'm going to do here is basically give a background if you are a non-fan of Transformers. Because I'm sure all of you, and even maybe some of you viewers and listeners, have had the experience, if somebody knows that you're a Transformers fan and a new movie comes out, are you excited to go see the movie? And my answer is generally no. And here's an illustration as to why. And these are the paragraphs that I wrote before. Hopefully they make a little sense to you. Imagine, if you will, a story that you're familiar with, or a series of stories that contains familiar characters. It may be that your mind is now drawn to something that you actually like a lot, and this is good because it helps me get my point across more vividly. In this example, I'm going to use Disney's version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Imagine that Snow White gets a live-action film treatment. I know it already has, so let's suppose that it hasn't for a moment. Upon the viewing of the film, you find that the story and the characters that you are so familiar with and love from Snow White bear little to no resemblance to the film you saw as a child. Imagine if Snow White is not a nice girl, the dwarves themselves are not charming in any way, let alone named the same names. There is no Sneezy, no Grumpy, but there are other ones like Big Nose and Gutterbrain that are present instead. Yeah, Horny, whatever. There is no Prince Charming at all. His element is not even there. Imagine that this film is set in feudal Japan, where Snow White is a geisha and the dwarves are all samurai warriors. The gist of the story basically is that Snow White actually commands her little samurai army against an evil witch ninja that is trying to take over the world. Is this getting weird for you as I'm reading it? Well, good.
I want to see this.
Yeah, well, good, because only it's illustrating my point. If this is getting weird, but she's fighting this evil witch, only to find out that the evil witch ninja only wanted to show her power, how powerful she was, and that Snow White was almost as evil as she was. Wow, that's out there, right? Well, what the hell have they done? This is not what I was expecting nor wanting out of the Snow White that I was thinking. This must be what you're thinking. Sure, it was an action-packed thrill ride, and with some great moments, and you're still leaving the theater disappointed. Why? We all know the story of Disney's Snow White. We all know how it's supposed to play out. There's generally nothing wrong with changing things up a bit to keep it fresh, but at what point is it gone too far? The point of completely ignoring the source material for something that represents it in name only, adding and deleting characters, or just minor plot twists. Well, my thoughts on The Last Night are, there are points that I enjoyed. I did enjoy Cogman. He was a likable character, added a lot of humor to the movie. I was disappointed in that he was presented as a Transformer. He's been around for centuries, but yet we never see him actually transform. He's basically a pilot for some cars, and we get to hear him sing "Move, bitch, get out of the way." It's.
But his tongue was a freaking missile.
Yeah.
Got to give him that. That was cool.
Yeah. So he was cool. There was elements of it. I did like Otrod. He had that cool Lamborghini, but and there were action scenes that were awesome to view. But from a standpoint, whenever you're looking at the story of the movie. And I've been sitting here listening to Don and Daniel and Jack and Jim. Everybody has mentioned this doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. What about this? And that is the biggest problem with this movie. The movie makes no sense. Everything is out of context. You get no backstory. Why does this happen? Why were there Transformers in medieval Earth giving staffs to humans and telling them to use it as magic and
very important staffs.
Yeah,
it wasn't just like it's not just like, here's my gun, I got many of them. No, here's a very vital Cybertronian piece of history, and I'm just going to give it to this random human that asked kind of drunkly nicely.
Yeah.
Why is Merlin sozzled?
Like you said, yeah, like you said, Quintessa, where the hell did she come from? Why, she just happened to be there. Like you said, Prime, he just drifting through space and just happens to land in Cybertron. There's just so much wrong story-wise with this movie. So many leaps of judgment, so many leaps of storytelling here. You know, how did you get to this point from this point? What was in between? We don't know this. And without knowing this, the result makes no sense whatsoever. You know, we still see Bumblebee shoot Quintessa, and then at the end of the movie, boom, she shows up again. And this has been not just encapsulated in The Last Night. This has been since the beginning of the Transformers live-action movie franchise. We see Transformers come and get killed, and you know, Megatron has been killed a couple times, and and brought back in different forms. We don't even know why has the form he has now. He just shows up. He looks like Ultron from Avengers.
He can enunciate now.
Yeah. Bumblebee apparently under times of duress can actually talk when his voice box was supposedly not functioning. He has to talk to it through a radio, and then all of a sudden, at a very, very crucial plot point time that he needs to speak, he speaks now. What the hell? It's just lots of things that just leaves you sitting there going, why? This thing just I disagreed with Don whenever he was saying this movie seemed to have more of a plot and everything. This movie here seemed like they took elements of a story, put it in a minigun, and set it on full spin and shot it at us at full speed.
Every movie has a plot. It's how one lines out the plot that makes the movie. Every movie has a storyboard. Every movie has a goal, a beginning, a middle, and end. The problem is that you have to tell that story. Instead, and you can't even say, well, there wasn't enough time to tell that story. There was enough time, but that time was instead dedicated to, well, we need to have a scene where a bunch of British ladies are eavesdropping on Cade and Vivian maybe having sex. There was more of an emphasis on spending 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there on scenes that were really not, important. The character of Jimmy, that could have been written out of the movie. The NASA scientist that almost seemed like to be this no, man, science is for nerds. What are you the nerds in science? All these characters that really, if they were absent from the movie, would have not changed the pace, the storytelling, or the plot. And that time that could have been dedicated instead to fleshing out that plot more. We did have a Mr. Exposition character in, Anthony Hopkins' character. He literally spent a good 20 minutes of the movie just fleshing things out. But at the same time, there was just so many. Look, as much as I love that John Turturro, Agent Simmons' character came back, those scenes in general, if you watch them, and I saw the movie twice, it looks like those scenes, they were, second time was bootleg. I felt like those scenes were filmed in one shot in 15 minutes in this one corner of this one scene in wherever they were recording. They said, John, we're going to have you stand next to this phone booth. You're going to pick it up, read these lines, and then you're going to pick it up, read these lines. We're going to CG a robot over here, so just pretend you're talking to something. That was it. And then they just kind of fragmented him in 3 different scenes throughout the entire movie in this one spot, in this one scene, in this one corner. And if you left him out of the movie completely, because you think about, what was Agent Simmons' role in this movie?
He served no role.
Yeah.
Well, and to that point, and this is something I was going to bring up, the Decepticons in this movie, if you really cut them out of this movie entirely, let's just say there are no Decepticons in this movie, and give the evil plot twists and the evil plans and the protection of Quintessa in the final battle at the end, give those scenes to Nemesis Prime. And save his salvation from Bumblebee until after those moments. The Decepticons served absolutely jack shit purpose in this movie.
It's a different time now.
Pointless.
Now we have a time now where Hasbro is very nervous about doing properties that don't have an Optimus Prime or a Megatron at the forefront. We had the Robots in Disguise 2.0 cartoon series that came out, but they very quickly went about bringing back Prime and a character named Megatronus later on into the series, and just within the first season. So there's not a lot of confidence in that. I feel that maybe this Bumblebee movie coming up will give us a taste and give Hasbro a taste of what a Transformer movie could be like without an Optimus Prime and without a Megatron. And I have a theory of what that movie will be about. But outside of that, they don't have confidence in that. And, people, like you mentioned before, not being true to the source material and how that could be a detriment. I felt with Transformers, we've had a lot of times where things were different and it wasn't a bad thing. When we went into Beast Wars, it wasn't like the source material. You know, we did not have cars. We did not have, it was a different environment, a different cast of characters, a different story, a different timeline. It wasn't like the source material, but it still was an enjoyable
Well, it was still true to the spirit of Transformers.
Well, what is the spirit in comparison to a 1984, 1985, 1986 animated Sunbound?
Well, I'm not just talking about Generation 1. I'm just talking about the general spirit of Transformers.
But what I'm just trying to get at is just that we've had stuff that was always a deviation from what the original was. But at the end of the day, as long as it was enjoyable, we enjoyed it. I don't mind the movies being different as long as they're enjoyable. And the problem is that if you want to sell an enjoyable Transformer story to me, it's got to have Transformers. It's got to be enjoyable. And if those two things aren't there,
Jim,
you know, you're not going to sell me.
Yeah, Jim.
Well, when you were talking about, you know, having a you know, Transformers without an Optimus or Megatron, it got me thinking. And I realized something that I kind of enjoy about The Last Night now. After 31 years, Hot Rod has finally atoned for his sin. We made it through a Transformer movie with Optimus and Hot Rod did not get Optimus killed.
Okay.
But see, my point is that this movie, The Last Night, in my opinion, feels like someone who was writing this film was given the cliff notes of 30 years of Transformers history, of different story elements that have been used within the Transformers franchise. You know, from the Quintessons to the Gaia Unicron, which is essentially what we've got in this film. You know, from Transformers Prime. You know, someone mentioned earlier that Megatron in this movie had elements of Beast Machine's Megatron in him, and I can kind of see that in his appearance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like someone who was writing this movie was given the cliff notes of Transformers, but no information as to the background or the details of said elements of the Transformers franchise history. And they just took these elements, threw them into the story and say, oh, here's a reference you'll like, but they totally misused the reference.
I fear that there's a 4-hour cut of this movie somewhere. You know, that's the thing that freaks me out, is that there's probably a 4-hour cut of this movie.
With a lot more baby Dinobots.
Michael Bay has no idea how to hire people that know how to edit a damn movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was something I mentioned in one of my reviews. There's a lot of human scenes where if you watch them, you could see where there were scenes where there was stuff that was cut out. And then there's this one scene, the beginning of the movie, you guys might not remember it, where Vivian is talking to a crowd at a museum, and she poses the question, why do you think dragons are so cool? And you see that there was a scene that happened, they cut it out, because there's this girl with like purple hair, she raises her hand, they cut out that scene, and then she responds to her as if that line happened, and then you hear the laughing in the background, and it's like, was that intended to be in there? Like you said, the editing is with Bay movies
it's horrible. It's horrible.
Pretty bad.
Don.
Let
Don speak.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, now, I was going to say, Don, I totally understand what you're saying, and I agree with every single thing you said. I really do. I can see why you said that. I completely agree. I'm just having sort of stick with it being, again, with the cat, with the giant asterisk floating out here, for a Michael Bay Transformers film, it was a lot more solid. It was like there was actually some effort trying to make it.
There was effort, and
you know,
that was
yeah. It's just so, but it's just.
The caveat about this movie is that, they made some effort to actually refer to actual things within the Transformers franchise. You know, make a Transformers movie that's more about Transformers, yet still be able to fall flat on their face and fail miserably with it.
It's kind of like when Hasbro back in the early 2000s, they were assigning names to characters that had nothing to do with the history of that character's name. Like Smokescreen and Armada being a crane truck. I mean, you know, there's that. And that's kind of what you're talking about, I think, is that they're name dropping stuff in the completely wrong context.
Yeah.
But
and coming up with names when there's no need for it. In the history of 30 plus years of Transformers, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of characters that have been that are established, have bios written about them to where you have some little semblance. I don't care if you pick a character from Generation 1, a character from Beast Machines, and a character from IDW comics, and a character from, whatever line you want to pick, from one of the video games. There are established characters that that they can use, I'm sure, that would fulfill roles that they could use within these films.
Oh, I agree.
Yet they go out of their way to create
There's no shortage of things to pull from, in other words.
Yeah. They go out of their way to create these characters like Mohawk. Why? The twins. Why? There's no need for them.
Yeah.
It's Nitro Zeus. It's a cool name. But there's no need to create a new character. There are jets. If you want a jet Decepticon that fits his bill, we haven't gotten Thundercracker or Skywarp yet. Call him one of those.
You could use Storm Shot. He's an RID Autobot, but he's still a beefy looking jet. But I mean, it's kind of sad that you have all these faults with the movie, but in many cases, it's still a better movie than what we've been getting because. And you're glad and you're sad at the same time because, like I said originally, it should not have taken them this long to get a basically functioning, coherent movie, even as bad as it is.
I don't think we're there yet still.
Compared to what we've been getting, to me, this is a solid effort in the franchise.
It is.
I think
outside of the franchise, no. It's still structurally a house of cards, but it's still better than what we've got.
Orci and Kurtzman wrote a good first movie. Then they went on to do whatever they wanted to do with Star Trek and gave us a half-ass second movie. Kruger gave us a
writer's strike too.
Yeah, well, that too. But the point is when Orci and Kurtzman came back, they had a choice to write 2 movies to their fullest instead of just giving it to someone else to write it, and they decided to write 2 movies and put all their effort into Star Trek. Star Trek was what it was successful, and they kind of hung out at a hotel while Michael Bay fluffed their pillows. There's extras footage of this that you could go watch. Michael Bay fluffed their pillows while they wrote a half-ass script for Revenge of the Fallen. Yeah. Kruger, for the third movie, again, a guy who was nothing more than a adaptation writer for Japanese horror movies was then given the pen to write an original draft for this movie. Meh, again, there's a lot of the same feelings that I have for this one as I do for the third one with Dark of the Moon, and the fourth one was just a lot of broken promises.
Well, yeah, the first one is still the best movie from start to finish, but
it was.
And Orci and Kurtzman are not bad writers, but the second time around, it was them phoning it in. So it's the same thing, just like how Simon Furman could be heralded as one of the greatest writers in Transformers, but there has been times where he's phoned it in with, let's say, the Armada comic books with Dreamwave, and product suffers. So it's
which was still better than the show, though.
But that's not a fair comparison. But okay. But
the thing is, the argument has been made that whenever you approach the live action movies, to approach them from a non-fan standpoint and take them encapsulated as their own beast, and they're not trying to be G1, they're not trying to be RID, they're not trying to be anything. They're their own continuity. But whenever they have a problem staying within their own continuity, retconning its own damn self constantly. With each movie, something that happened in a prior movie, even the movie right before it, is completely negated by or completely rewritten for the purpose of a plot point in the next movie. And it's like, okay, when you think somebody's dead, they're not. When you think somebody is not dead, they are. characters
Aaron
come and
Archer-
go.
Aaron Archer during a panel said that when he was with Hasbro, they sat down and they said they wanted to do what Marvel was doing. They saw how Marvel was handling their property and how they were building a brand new fan base that was willing to go on the ride regardless where they brought them, where they were just able to say, hey, Guardians of the Galaxy, C-list characters, and people fell in love with it. So they wanted to do the same thing as what they were doing. And yet they're not doing that. Instead, they're going, well, forget what we did before.
They gave Michael Bay way too much creative license.
Oh, totally.
With this series of films.
He was on a dog chain in that first movie. I firmly believe that Steven Spielberg had a lot more to do with that first movie than people give him credit for. I think that because of the success of that first movie and how it was such a blockbuster, that's what then led to, not to mention toy sales and just everything. It saved Transformers in a lot of ways. They then kind of just gave him the keys to the car and said, drive like crazy, my man, And that's what we got.
Cause explosions.
Well, the thing is,
explosion.
The thing is that I'm fine with taking the live action movies for what they are, and okay, the live action movies, they're creating their own continuity. They're their own thing. They're their own beast. I get that. But whenever you take a franchise that is over 30 years old now, that has and if you even take out the fan base completely, if you have a franchise and you are making a movie about it, then make a movie about it, not just a movie that has it in name only. You're having characters, Optimus Prime in no continuity whatsoever has been bloodthirsty to the point of wanting to say, of saying I want to kill them all. That is not Optimus Prime.
Shattered glass.
No, Optimus
Well,
Prime.
that's not an Optimus Prime character. You using a Mirrorverse character as an example is not a good example.
No.
But Duran is correct. It's up not even in the case of Optimus Prime. Up to this point, every single leader character that has existed in the Transformers fiction, from let's say a cartoon standpoint, there has been, hey, Grimlock was once a leader in the Marvel books.
Yeah.
But it has always been more or less very clean cut, has always been a very noble character. And this Optimus Prime, it's like as every movie progressed, he became like us, where we just got tired of this shit, and it's just like
especially
he just got
4.
Yeah, he just got it's just more anger. I'll never forget the end of Dark of the Moon, where after he killed Sentinel Prime, there's just this scene where the camera's just spinning around him. It's going da 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 da, and I thought he was going to blow his own brains out. I thought he was going to take Sentinel Prime's gun and just go bam, because I just felt it was building to that, where it's like, what do I believe in anymore? It's just this, and Peter Cullen has said it himself in interviews that he's not a fan of what's being portrayed on the screen here.
It's just not quintessentially Optimus Prime. At least if he is got to fight, and if he has got to fight to the death, like against Megatron in the '86 movie, at least it's for a purpose, and it's not out of a bloodlust. It just doesn't seem. The movie Optimus Prime, while it is probably, for me personally, the most likable and most memorable character in the movies, he's still not. These movies are just Transformers in name only. It doesn't. I mean, and like I said earlier, you take elements of the Transformers franchise and misuse them, misapply them, try to rewrite them into something, fit them in, shoehorn them into a film that you've created and it just doesn't work.
Well, the reality was this script for this movie, when you really watch it, And if you and it's as crazy as this sound, you take the Transformers out of them, the script trucks along just fine. Think about the adventures of Cade and Vivian in that submarine leading to the climax and the denouement of the movie. Did you need Transformers? You needed to have Quintessa as the big bad, but as you get towards that conclusion, all you need to have Cade with the sword and her with the staff, and that movie could reach its conclusion. Yeah, you need the Transformers for the explosions and the action and stuff, but for the plot to move forward, you didn't need the Transformers, and that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's a big problem.
And that is the problem with the whole series of movies, is that you have a movie, you have a series of stories about the that are supposed to be about the Transformers. I mean, that's what's on the title of the movie. But yet they're not the focal point. And Michael Bay even said in the very first movie, I wanted to make a movie about a boy and his car. He didn't want to make a movie about giant robots from outer space. He wanted to make a movie about a boy and his car. And he wanted to make it relatable so that the general audience, and not necessarily the hardcore fan, would enjoy this movie. But the problem lies in the fact that, yeah, that's all fine and good if you want to have an interrelational or a relationship between Sam and Bumblebee. That's fine and dandy, but don't make that the focal point of the movie. Make it an aspect of the movie, a subplot that may go from the beginning to the end, but make the movie about the giant robots from outer space that happens to turn into trucks and cars and jets and everything, because that's what Transformers is. If you don't want to do that, then don't make the damn film.
The original 80s, the original
in particular, I almost wonder if that might have been more Steven Spielberg's prompting.
Again, I feel that Spielberg has way more to do with that first movie than
Right.
I think you have to understand who Bay was prior to that movie and what his resume was after that movie. I think that they were more careful with what they were going to do with him in 2007. They were a lot more liberal with what they were going to do with him post 2007. What I wanted to get to was, you look at the original 86 movie, an hour and approximately 42 minutes, almost half of the length of this movie, and their ability to tell a story and flesh out memorable characters. That, to a lot of people, they know Springer just from the 86 movie, regardless of what they see of season 3 and that of season 4 in a little droplet. But it's the same thing for RC, for Blur. They were able to flesh out and create, but the focus is that they were able to put robots on the screen. Now, granted, I know how Hollywood is, and it's the same thing that they do with the superhero movies. They try to avoid having actors wear masks because it's all about the actors. So if you have an Iron Man, let's try to have him without his helmet on as much as possible. If you're going to have a Wolverine, don't give him a mask at all. So with these movies, it's like they don't want to have a Transformer movie because then it'll just be a CG movie. They want to justify and push that live action button by making sure that the Transformers at all times are fighting in front of a bunch of live action actors.
It was very apparent in The Last Night. This was the most expensive Transformers movie made to date. I want to say, what was a budget of $260 million?
It was like 260 or 270.
Yeah, $260 million. We'll just go with 260 million. Yet, I guarantee you, if you went back to the very first one in 2007 and Revenge of the Fallen, there were probably twice as many. I would dare say twice as many transformation sequences in those first two movies as there was in this movie. This movie here, as opposed to focusing on the robots and showing them transform and showing them fight, it was more, I'd say a lot more of that money was pumped into paying the places for location shooting and lots of explosions.
And here's an interesting fact, too. The bootleg of this movie that's circling around right now, we will not share any links, so don't bother messaging TFYLP, but the bootleg that's circling around right now is the Chinese theater camera bootleg. You go watch that bootleg, there is extra footage in that bootleg of Chinese product placement that isn't present in our stateside version.
Yeah,
there's extra. There's extra of it in there. So
Now, are you referring to a theater in China or the Chinese theater in Hollywood?
no, I'm referring to a theater in China.
Okay, just clarifying. I didn't know.
There's a bootleg
premiere.
of the movie right now kicking around. That was obviously Chinese bootleg. Someone recorded it in the theater. There's Chinese subtitles at the bottom of this bootleg. But if you watch it and side by side it with the actual last night movie, there's extra scenes put in it for Chinese product placement for an app, for 2 different kinds of food companies, and a soda. And that's that I know of at the moment. There's probably even more that maybe got missed, but it shows that this movie was making money from other venues too. It had its other agendas in different ways. This movie, in the end, it's junk food. You know what I mean? It's junk food.
It's enjoyable for a moment, but afterwards
it's not good for you, man.
Yeah,
it
afterwards you regret having taken it in.
Yep.
I mean,
so
six movies now. 86 is still number 1 for all the right reasons, but
well,
It's got the touch.
yeah.
yeah.
So we've actually talked about the movie a lot. I'm sure we could go on and talk about what we liked and what we hated and what's wrong with the movies. I think the general consensus for all 5 of us is that we have a lukewarm feeling about this movie. It was better in a lot of ways, but it wasn't great. It was enjoyable. I found it more enjoyable than Age of Extinction. But the problems with this movie are hard, if not impossible, to ignore. Am I accurate in saying that?
6 out of 10. Solid 6 out of 10.
Yeah, because in any discussion of this movie, you're going to have to confront the shuffler in the room because there's problems.
I love your analogy.
You're
The biggest
the
thing.
Beast Wars Ironhide in the room.
Yeah, the biggest thing I noticed about this movie over the previous one, Age of Extinction, they transform.
Yeah, they do. They
Think
don't
back
just
to Age of
disassemble.
Extinction.
They don't just disassemble.
I'm not even
and
talking about
reassemble.
Transformium. I'm not talking about necessarily Galvatron and Stinger in particular. But I mean, think back to Hound, to Crosshairs, to Bumblebee, to Optimus Prime. Do we ever see them actually convert from
No, it's a
vehicle to
scene.
robot?
One scene they're
It's
a
like-
vehicle, and the next they change scenes, and then they go back,
Yep.
and then they're a robot.
Precisely.
Yep.
They cheat so much in this movie. It's not
There's
even
technically no Transformers in Transformers 4.
funny. Yeah. Well, it's
Well, that
the
was-
same
that
way
was-
in the
It's
last
like
night.
they got the robot, then they had the car.
It's the same
Right.
thing
That
in the
was,
last
that
night.
was
On a
one of the
leash,
big
pulling
negatives
it
of that
around.
movie.
And
was
it
one of the big
probably
negatives of that
saved millions by doing that.
Now, I do want to say, to our viewers and listeners, if you do see that and I missed it, please post in the group and let me know. Tag me, whatever. I'm thinking maybe the Dinobots probably transformed, but outside of that, I don't
gotta
think
say,
anyone else did. I think
personally-
huh?
Me personally, the baby Dinobots pissed me off.
I
Just
love
the
them.
whole concept of them. I'm like, they serve no purpose. They don't further the plot. Is what I mean by that. They serve no purpose. There's no explanation as to how or why they're there.
Pretty much like the regular Dinobots too. It's like they're there. What are they doing?
I
Well,
have
They're
I have
not.
a-
They're and on top of that, they're not product placement up to our knowledge at this point. You know
No.
what I mean? There's no toys of them that we know of, so it's not like they're trying to sell something to us.
And it just opens up the fact, so there are baby Transformers.
Well, we saw the hatchlings in what was that? Revenge of the Fallen or Dark?
Yeah, I
One?
was just about to say.
Revenge
then
of the
they had,
Fallen
like, the
had,
one-
had the
Revenge of the Fallen.
protoforms.
Yeah,
Then
but
they had the one
those are
scene in,
more or less
Dark of the Moon.
protoforms. They're almost adult, I guess.
I have a sneaking suspicion that they're going to throw us a curveball, and that those baby Dinobots are going to end up being some kind of combiner in some way.
I think
Or-
we're never going
or-
to hear from them
Or
ever again.
maybe the Dinobots end up becoming headmasters, and the babies are the heads. I
Boy,
don't know.
giving this
We
movie
don't
too
see
much
we don't see the robot modes in Transformers 5.
We don't see a lot of robot modes in Transformers.
I'm kind of
We don't see a lot of anything.
hoping that they're
They're
more.
locked none of
They
them
were
transform.
more of a creation of Cade or something other.
Hey man,
That could very well be too.
Hot Rod was 3 different alt modes in this movie. He was a Citroen DS, which was that first old car that he was.
Yeah.
He's the Lambo, actually transformed.
Totally not locked down.
Then the World War
Totally
II.
not locked
And
down.
then we got the
That's-
World War II scene, so
That's
and
another.
that's
That's
the
an-
one. That's the
Sorry.
one thing I want to touch on is, I feel that World War II scene is what's going to be kind of what the Bumblebee movie is going to be about.
I think that's
feel
the
like-
whole purpose of it even being there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like the setup with Cogman, Hot Rod, and Bumblebee, and those characters being introduced, and the whole history of those three with Hammond and everything, I feel like it's setting up something. And for anyone who's seen the Wonder Woman movie that recently also came out, I feel like we're going to go into that Bumblebee movie in the same fashion, where it's going to be a sequel story that then goes backwards and revisits that character's Nazi punching days, if you will. And it'll be a story of, because people were always like, oh, it's going to be a Bumblebee movie. I don't think it's so much going to be a Bumblebee movie that it's going to be a movie where Bumblebee is the main character, but we're still going to have a new cast of Transformer characters. I think, we were introduced on Hammond's estate, this tank robot. We were that was like this old, dementia tank robot. We were introduced to all these other Transformers that I think are going to be a factor in this Bumblebee movie. And I mean, I'm hoping that if this Bumblebee movie is a period piece, let's say a World War II period piece where they're just,
I thought it was
fighting
going to be
Nazis.
set in the 80s.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
God.
thought it was
I've
going to
heard
be
that
World
too.
War II or the 80s.
Well, you know what? It was funny because there was that post somewhere that they were saying that Bumblebee might return to his Volkswagen origins. Let me tell you
I
something.
think it's fan wish.
But let's put it this way: if that is true, who created the Volkswagen?
Germany.
Anyone?
Mhm.
Good
Hitler.
point. Very good point.
Hitler created the Volkswagen. He was the one who helped design that cute little bug. It was a World War II, 19.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So if they want to really revisit that,
Is that
Bumblebee
accurate?
that is true.
Yeah,
Yes.
I remember reading that last year.
I'm a
Hitler
mechanic.
wanted.
I'm a mechanic that works in W. You know what I mean?
Okay. I'll
had
trust
never
you
heard
then.
that before.
Now, I personally, I wasn't sure if it was.
Anyone in the chat that feels otherwise, please speak up. But this is fact. And so the thing is that if you want to write a Bumblebee story where he's infiltrating, let's say, Germany and helping the Allies, which is kind of what they were doing, it looked like Bumblebee scrolled up and they were all spies and stuff. That's one way to write it in there. You want to revisit Bumblebee's Volkswagen past, you could start right at the beginning. And
There
then
you go.
just way right towards Bobby Bolivia's lot.
Mhm.
I hope they actually do that kind of serve the ties between World War II and getting up to the car lot. That'd be kind of.
And it'd be nice if Prime makes a cameo in it and he's a 79 cab over.
Well, see, I feel that if they do a period piece, I would be interested. I think that it would be so different. I mean, Bay loved doing his army movies, but we'll get something that's more of a Saving Private Ryan or a just a period piece World War II kind of movie that with a Transformer spin on it could be interesting, and only for the fact that because it would have interesting designs, because everything would be old. It wouldn't be, hey, let's advertise the latest car. Instead, it would be like, hey, let's have fun. It would give credit to some of those movie toys that, like, we had the biplane that was based off of the Red Baron.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
His name was
Ransack.
Ransack. Yep.
It's
You know
the
what I mean? So,
closest-
like, it would be very interesting to see a Transformer Bumblebee movie line with all these old school designs, a la, like we've gotten in the past with some of these iron, steel, and everything.
And
it'd be the
and
closest we can get to Hearts of Steel.
Hearts of Steel, thank you. Yeah, that.
See that.
if we're dealing with World War II, this won't happen. It'll be too good if it happened. Therefore, it won't. But we're dealing with World War II as a flashback. We're dealing with the war. We're dealing with battles like Guadalcanal, Combaticons, because they were in World
That's
War
what I'm trying
II.
to say.
Operation
This is-
Overlord there on
This
Normandy.
is something that they
Trying-
could
Maybe
there's no
that
rules
could
with the
be the
movie.
antagonist.
There's no rules with the movie verse, so introducing Combaticons introducing, like throwing them in there and saying, hey, they've always been there, combiners have always been there. The movie verses have done worse offenses when it comes to continuity and throwing in characters. I wouldn't expect it at
Continuity?
this point.
What's that?
Yeah.
Well, that's
Continuity.
What do you mean there was a character named Brawl in the first movie? Whatever, he was in this one too, and he survived, and then he made it all the way to the Bay movie in the third. But wait, wasn't he a Decepticon from space? Who cares?
They never really said when the Decepticons arrived.
Well, we're supposed to believe from the trailers that Megatron at some point arrived with them at Mars. Remember that first trailer we got?
Sure,
and then
I understand, but
they reused
they never actually came out and said
movie.
when Barricade arrived, when Brawl arrived, or Devastator, whichever you want to call it.
They were. That was explained in a DVD pack-in with the Walmart exclusive of the 2007.
I forgot about that. Beginnings.
But that's IDW stuff, which I feel is that's IDW stuff, which I feel is again kind of swept under the rug at this point. So I don't know. Again, I'm trying to put continuity to something that doesn't want to deal with it anymore. So.
Yeah. Well, I think we beat this horse to death.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we beat it to death and then pulled out an Uzi and see what I did there and shot it. So, go ahead, Don.
I guess the best thing for the listeners is that if you've not seen it, don't worry about what we've said. Take it into consideration, but don't let it cloud.
These are just our thoughts and our feelings.
Go
on
to the
it.
movie, watch it, and then let us know what
Absolutely.
you think.
And,
Pretty much what I've done for all 5 of them, just go with low expectations and
you won't
figure it out from there.
That I expected this movie to absolutely blow balls whenever I went in. I was actually more pleasantly surprised by the movie than I was disappointed because I had such low expectations.
I don't know.
I'm going to have to quote Don Carnage. You have not done such a terrible job, which is about the best praise I can give.
Is it safe to say that this movie, Transformers 5, The Last Night, is the most Transformery of the Transformers movies?
No.
Next to the first one.
That.
The first one, I think, was the most Transformers.
I mean, as far as like Saturday morning type antics with like an alien planet coming to Earth.
I have to also say,
I'd give the third one that more. I'd give the third one that.
I have to also say, the one thing that bothered me the most about this film, and also using the fact that this is a franchise about this movie is about the Transformers franchise. What has Hasbro been beating into us for years and years and years and years? Okay, the collectors aren't the focal point. Transformers are primarily aimed at kids. Yet these movies, Last Night, you go in there, this movie, like Don was saying, there was a lot less of the cringeworthy aspect of this movie. What I found cringeworthy was the most foul-mouthed Transformers in this movie than in any of the previous movies.
Yeah, even worse than
they were saying shit and fuck and all that stuff.
Hey, how many movies do you have Sir Anthony Hopkins swearing like that and calling people a dickhead?
I mean, we're adults, and this podcast is aimed at adult collectors and everything. I don't worry so much about I know there may be kids that watch it, but it's not. I don't expect 10 to 12-year-olds sit down and watch 2-hour podcasts of old guys talking about toys. But whenever you have a film that is supposed to be about transforming robots that is based on a children's toy line, I am absolutely appalled that to go in there and hear them talking like that.
Yeah, it's not as bad as taking your kid to see Deadpool, but it's not far down the list.
It's not. There's. And I'm not trying to be the angry parent here. I'm not. It's just
there's issues that need.
There's issues that should not be in a movie that is based on a children's toy line.
Especially when one line that said we're gonna bust a cap in your ass came from an Autobot in the second movie.
Yeah. Well,
Coming from an Autobot.
granted, the '86 movie had shit in it, and damn it. But those Flint Dilley told us right here on this podcast.
Yeah.
It is documented that those were put in there by studio executives with the sole purpose to get a PG rating, and they were like 2 instances, and they went by so quickly you really didn't notice. But when you have this movie, The Last Night, that is so rife with the foul language from the it's one thing to have it from the human characters, but whenever a young child, a smaller child, goes to these movies, they're going to focus on those big robots because that's what's eye-catching and appealing. And hearing those...
That's what they went for it for.
Yeah, and they hear that, and they're going to... I just think it opens up a whole can of worms that doesn't need to be there. I don't... to me, it's words. That's my opinion on it. But... I understand that there's parents out there that want to ease their child into, okay, these are words that are not friendly in public. They're not nice to say. You have to, as you get older, you learn when you can say them and when you can't. But you go to a child, you take a child, and I'm not saying young children like 7, 8, and 9. I'm sure there's some that go. But when you take some, like kids that are older, and they tend to try to mimic the adults, like 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds. They hear this, maybe they're it just opens up a can of worms that doesn't need to be there, in my opinion.
On the flip side of that, would you rather your kids learn it from a complete stranger who you don't know, or from someone you know, love, and trust, like the Autobot?
It's one thing to learn it from being out in public. It's one thing to learn it from other kids, other adults, and everything. I just don't think it has a place in Transformers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know what? It could exist, but it's all the way that it's presented. A kid could go see the movie RoboCop, but RoboCop, and that's a heavy-handed movie for a kid to be seeing.
Original,
but
remake?
Original.
Good.
I was about to say the remake. No, don't see that. No.
But the thing is that a kid could see that movie, and I would not recommend that. But if they're swearing in it, it's not coming from the good guys. You know what I mean? It's not coming from the protagonists in the movie.
At least have it from the bad guys. Yeah, exactly.
It's coming from Red Foreman.
You'll have Clarence or other characters who are already portrayed to the child who's watching it. This is a negative guy who's using negative language. You don't have RoboCop saying it. You know what I mean? Where you have the Bay movies up to this point. It's not just this one, but a lot of them, where the Autobot characters are depicted as foul-mouthed characters and stuff like that. And that's fine if it's that one character where that's his trait. But I mean, Crosshairs is like that. Sideswipe was like that. Hound was like that. So you go. I'm pretty sure. I don't think Ironhide had any lines like that. Maybe I could be wrong, but I don't think so. But the point is that it exists. And when you're talking about a movie that's also trying to create some kind of moral grounds and an education for children, and it's like, oh, you're trying to teach a kid using Transformers. But you know what? We're all a product of the stuff we grew up with.
Exactly.
And thank goodness we didn't grow up with that kind of morally ambiguous kind of stuff. We had stuff that was a little more black and white back then, and it really shaped us who we were.
Now you've got me wondering, what is the moral of the story of the Transformers movies?
There's no plot, so you can't. That's the problem. Is that there's so much inner conflict with every single movie. Of the Allspark does this, instead it does this at the end. We got to stop the Fallen for X reason, instead Y happens instead with suicide. And then it's like the Autobots have to help the humans. No, the humans are working with the Decepticons, and there's an Autobot who's a traitor. There's always something that creates this ambiguity of the story, and then they have a good idea, but the plot doesn't churn out as the way they hoped, mixed with bad editing, voice acting, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I don't want to get into this anymore. It's too much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, bottom line is like, you know, I understand there's parents out there that, you know, they don't mind their children exposing their children to stuff like this. And that's all fine and dandy. I'm not here about, you know, trying to preach about, you know, learn what you can show to your children and what not. But I just don't think this is the right medium for this kind of language. You know, I mean, there's, you know, you go to a Deadpool movie, that's what Deadpool is about. You know, Deadpool is a comic character that is crass, rude, and crude. You know,
there was never anything about the Deadpool character up to that point that was like rampant in toy stores or long, you know, franchise cartoon series. There wasn't anything that said made for kids. In the entire lineage of Deadpool, there's been maybe 6 or 7 retail action figures of that character. So on top of that, if you were a kid buying stuff in stores, you had a Toy Biz toy and maybe 91, and then you had maybe a Marvel Legends figure here and there. But there was no reason for this kid going, "Mommy, I want to see this Deadpool movie because I saw this." You know, even in animation, maybe just direct DVD stuff. That was about it. Which, I mean, Hulk versus Wolverine was no kids movie either. You know.
Well, I mean, that's a good point because that's the point I'm trying to get at here. Obviously, these movies are aimed at kids in some way, shape, or form because you go to the toy stores and Walmart's and all these stores have these big displays and shelves and pegs full, generally, of Transformers toys aimed at kids.
Especially considering that now that Toys R Us goes out of their way to actually separate adult collectibles now. Like, I don't know if it's like this in Canada, but I know that
not so much in the U.S.
Well, I know when you go to the electronic section of Toys R Us, that's where the Walking Dead toys are. That's where they put the NECA stuff usually.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because we have a couple down here that are like that.
So they make a proactive effort to what's it called? Their Five Nights at Freddy's. They make a proactive effort to separate the more adult-based toys and more that kind of stuff in Toys R Us. Yet, you know, Transformers is right across from the Teen Titan toys. You know, that's from Teen Titan Go. It's right across from Star Wars. It's right across from World of Nintendo, Ninja Turtles, like Power Rangers, whatever your setup is. The point is, it's located with the boys ages 3 to 7 market section of that Toys R Us. Yep. And yet the product that they're putting out there, and I blame Michael Bay, because at the end of the day, he doesn't want to be someone writing a movie for children. So he's just trying to write his own movie. But at the same time, it's not something that even adults sit through and enjoy. So who are you writing for, Mr. Bay? Yeah.
Ryan Vegan Tech. I'm sorry if I botched your YouTube name there. He says that back in the day there were RoboCop, Alien, Alien toys and Rambo toys for kids. He had a Rambo knife that he threw to stick in the trees. However,
RoboCop and Rambo had cartoons.
There were cartoons.
The counter. That's what
kid friendly.
And Aliens had a comic book by Dark Horse at the time.
Exactly.
So there was other stuff there. Specifically, the RoboCop cartoon was the not Alpha Commandos. It was something was called Police, whatever. It was RoboCop and the Police, whatever. But it wasn't really marketed as RoboCop the movie toys. More so as RoboCop the Marvel Sunbrow cartoon toys. It wasn't Ed 209. It was ED 260, which was the Ed 209 in the cartoon.
Yeah,
that's a fun fact. If you buy the toys of that, and it's the same thing with going into the Aliens toys. The Aliens toys, there were some that pulled from those movies, but a majority of them, the Alien Dog and all those weird variants, were based off of the Dark Horse comics, which again, kids were picking up.
Exactly.
You know, and then Rambo cartoon.
You know, this I got to go here. Night Swords on here says, famously, a Florida Toys R Us had a separate adult section, and Grandma found it. So what you're saying is that Toys R Us had an adult section for adult toys?
No.
What kind of toys is Toys R Us selling?
All they say is Toys R Us. They never specify which.
Yeah. Hollywood, Hustler Hollywood R Us. But I think like I said, we've beat the movie into the ground, the topics. Everybody has their opinion on it. We'd love to hear your opinions. You can tweet them at us at TFYLP on Twitter, and the most easy forum to talk to us about stuff like this is on our Facebook group at facebook.com/TFYLP. We would absolutely love to hear from you. Again, help support us on Patreon at patreon.com/TFYLP. Guys, you have any quick closing thoughts before we wrap up?
The only good thing that came of the Bay movie, the one that just passed, the dog that Anthony Hopkins has in the movie. He's seen walking a dog at the beginning of the movie with when Hot Rod first shows up with Vivian.
Oh, yeah.
The story behind that dog was apparently there was a pound that was having very big difficulty having this specific dog getting adopted. He was getting adopted, returned. All the other dogs were getting adopted. He was on like death row, like they were going to put him to sleep because they just didn't have space for him. He was getting too old. And Michael Bay got wind of the story, casted the dog in the movie, and then because the dog was in the movie, instantly got adopted. Now he's in a happy family. So yay,
nice.
one good story. And if you want to read this story, if you go to Cineplex or there's certain chains of movie theaters, they have those free magazines that they give at the entrance called Entertainment, I think it is, or Preview Entertainment. The cover that has Wonder Woman is the one that has the story about that in there if you want to read it. So it's out there somewhere. And that's free at the theater. So that's the one good thing that came of these movies. So
I have to say,
that was going to get
the only person I've ever seen that goes to a movie theater to read.
Yeah. Well, here's one interesting thing for everybody. My theater has a thing called Flashback Cinema, and they're bringing back a lot of classics, showing them on the big screen. Jaws is coming up, several other movies as well. And on the day I went to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I saw Transformers at the same time.
Tinseltown around here does the same thing.
Yeah, and it was so great to watch Raiders on the big screen. But I believe there was more people in the 4:00 showing for Raiders than there was for the 1:00 showing of Transformers.
Wow,
I believe it.
That was something.
Well, guys, I think we've had a great show here. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in live. Lots of great comments and discussion going on in the live chat. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Also, I want to remind all the fans that are listening and watching this show, if you are also a fan of professional wrestling, there is a new podcast put out by myself and other people related to this podcast.
I hope to join it someday.
Yeah. Check out the Faux Wrestling Podcast. That's what we call it. It's FOWE Wrestling Podcast. Fans of wrestling everywhere. There is a Facebook group you can join. We are on iTunes currently, and also there is a YouTube channel. Right now there's only one episode, but check us out. Please like and subscribe if you're a fan of that. If you're a Transformers fan and everything and not a wrestling fan, it has nothing to do with Transformers. We are strictly wrestling on that show. So if you go in there and expect to hear a lot of Transformer references, you will be sorely disappointed.
When is the Sergeant Slaughter retrospective so I can tune in for that? 'Cause that's the only wrestler I ever watched.
Don't know.
There was a wrestling team that was related to Cybertron back in the day.
Well, also CM Punk had a Decepticon insignia on him. Yeah. So he had a Cobra and a Decepticon insignia on him.
Can't put that with the Mattel toy.
No. But thank you, everybody, for joining us this week on TFYLP. I'm not sure if we will be live next week, but there will be an episode. I will tell you that. Again, programming note, it is very difficult for us during the summer to get the cast all together and do a episode. So we're going to be doing a series of pre-records and have them ready for whenever we're not able to get together. I know I'll probably be traveling at least one Saturday in the next coming weeks because I'm off for the next 2 weeks. So it's it's just really hard to get people together and do a live show on a specific night of the week. So just bear with us, but we will be live whenever absolutely possible. For instance, tonight. I know last week or week before last, we weren't able to get a show together at all, and I truly apologize for that. But it was just, again, timing and scheduling issues that were unforeseen. We already had a pre-recorded episode, and we needed to have 2, and I didn't realize it until too late, and that is on me, and I apologize for that. But, that's the way live TV goes, or, well, YouTube TV. But we will see you next time on TFYLP. Good night, everyone.
Take care, bye.
Night.